Hello and welcome to Shattered Lives. My name is Paul Healy and I'm joined as always by Michael O'Toole. How's it going, Michael?
I'm Grant Paul. How are you?
Good. It's good to be back in our usual setting, as people will know, and thank you to everybody who listened. We were down in Kerry for the last podcast, a two-part special on the murder of Michael Gain, and it's performed really well. There's nearly 100,000 views on YouTube on the first video and close to 60,000 on the second. So thank you to everybody who's watched and everybody who's listened. It was an important piece of journalism for us, and I think we're quite proud of it.
And yes, I really enjoyed it myself. And subsequent to the YouTube pods coming out, people have contacted us saying they would like us to do more of these. I would like us to do more of these. So I know somebody mentioned, why don't you do one on Elizabeth Clark, who's the young woman who's been missing from Navan, presumed murdered since I think 2015. That's a great idea. So I would invite viewers or listeners to get in touch with us and tell us what they would like us to do similar extended pods on. I think there is something we could look into there. There may be some ideas that listeners have that might be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Please get in touch with us. We're on Twitter. You'll find our emails as well. So yeah, I mean, we're always up for ideas. It's a new medium for us, and I think we got a lot out of a lot more even than we expected to get out of the investigation. So thanks to everybody for allowing us.
I'm a grizzled old hack. You're a grizzled young hack, but this is still very much new for us because I was a print journalist for 30 years. You were a print journalist since what, 2015?
Yes, 2015. Yeah,
2015. Still, those good old days. So we're still learning broadcasting or whatever you want to call this. So it's a new world for us, and our listeners and viewers are very important to us. So we value people's input. So if people want to get in contact with us, we're more than happy to consider what they say.
Absolutely. And just because we've done a podcast on Mike Gain as well, I mean, that doesn't mean we aren't getting more information, and we'll appreciate any information we get in confidence. We might even do an update at some point. So listen, we've a lot we want to talk about.
Yeah, sorry, just before we go on, we are planning, remember we used to do those Q&As every couple of months. I think we're going to do a couple for around the Christmas period. That'll be really good. So if anybody has any questions, they can contact me and Mick the Hack. Healy Hack is Paul on Twitter, or they can contact, there's loads by these days they can contact us, but we're open to any questions and any suggestions.
Absolutely. Well, look, we have a lot of topics we want to talk about, and I suppose a lot of the stories this week have a common theme, which a horrible common theme, which is that it's violence against women. And it's poignant. This week on Tuesday, it was the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and there was a protest on in Dublin city centre. It was in it went to the Department of Justice. A lot of prominent victims of abuse and domestic violence who came out and marched on that issue of gender-based violence and spoke about some of the issues which we'll talk about in this podcast about our own justice system in this country. But Mick, I mean, you and I, we've both this week covered several incidents, several now live incidents of violence against women, and it's very sad that it happens in the week that this was being marked.
So on Thursday, well, let's talk about Thursday of last week, first of all. That day, you had a press conference to highlight Tuesday's meeting, and there were some victims of violence against women and girls who were speaking at this press conference.
Yeah, the event was organised by Rosa, the Rosa Movement, and also Ruth Coppinger, Deputy Ruth Coppinger, TD. And there were a number of victims there. People may know of Natasha O'Brien, who was assaulted by Cathal Crotty, the soldier in Limerick. People may know of Hazel Behan, quite a well-known case in that she's a Mullingar resident, originally from Dublin, who accuses Christian Bruckner, who is the chief suspect in the Madeleine McCann case, of being the person who raped her in Portugal all the way back in 2000 and I'll get this wrong, 2004, so just a couple of years before Madeleine was actually abducted.
2007.
In 2007. And there were a couple of other victims there who spoke out about I suppose their issues with the justice system, or one of the main issues that was being raised, and Hazel Behan, in fairness, has raised this before herself, was the use of therapy notes, counselling notes in in an actual trial process. So a victim of abuse could face the prospect of their own therapy notes, the stuff that they believed that they said in private in a room with a therapist, could be used as evidence in their case. And many victims feel that that's an invasion of privacy, and in many ways it deters them from coming forward at all.
You would think that in the sanctity of a counsellor's room, you could totally lay yourself bare, totally be honest, leave yourself very vulnerable because you're talking to a mental health professional and a mental health expert. So it is practically the same as having to have your medical notes going into your doctor, and then suddenly the doctor has to give your private notes to the court or the prosecution services. So you can
Yeah.
understand why victims are so up in arms about that.
Yeah, I totally understand that, and I do not see the point of your most private thoughts really to somebody being used as evidence, effectively against you, potentially in a criminal trial. I don't understand the worth of that, and indeed, I think even the Minister for Justice is attempting to address this issue, although many victims feel he hasn't gone far enough. So there is legislation being brought through that it effectively will leave it up to a judge to give the judge discretion as to whether this should or shouldn't be admitted in a trial process. But basically, victims are saying, look, there's no need for this at all. And in many ways, the justice system is hard enough for victims of abuse, and many of them never even get to see the inside of a courtroom. That's another issue that was raised. Um, I think of Rebecca Clark, right? So she was also there at the meeting. Rebecca Clark is a survivor of rape. She brought her case to Gardaí. I think in 2021, Gardaí investigated it. An individual was arrested, and it was taken to the DPP, and the DPP made the decision not to bring it to trial. And people may be familiar with that Nikisha Hans case against Conor McGregor. Similar sort of thing. This person has taken the process as far as they can, and then the DPP has told them no. And in her case, I know Rebecca says that she feels the threshold, or she was effectively told that the threshold is too high to take a rape case to trial. And the DPP is not necessarily saying we don't believe you, but they're saying there's a bar here in which we have to take it in terms of evidence to bring it to a jury.
Yes, so it's usually explained to me that they will say, what is there a realistic prospect of a jury? Because in rape trials, it is a jury.
Yeah.
Is there a realistic prospect of a jury coming to a decision on this? So they have to sit there and go, okay, do we think that there's enough for this to go to a jury and for a jury to bring it across the line? So obviously in this case, the DPP thought there wasn't.
Yeah, and I know that Rebecca is quite devastated about that, but she's speaking out still. In fairness to her, she's incredibly brave survivor of abuse, and she's speaking out, and she's one of these people who was part of the protest and prominent in the protest there this week. But there've been a lot of incidents of late, and I just want to mention one. It is the case of Emma Hallahan, who was abused by her ex-partner. It's a domestic abuse case, and he assaulted her in their home in 2024. In County Wexford, a fairly brutal assault and a sustained assault that went on over the course of a night, where Emma was dragged up and down the stairs by this man, and terrorized effectively. He kicked and punched her and told her that he was going to kill her several times. And for that, he received a 1 year prison term. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I look, I'm not supposed to have an opinion, but I think with the base facts that we know, that is quite a lenient sentence, to be honest with you. And that is certainly what Emma feels. And not only that, so I mean, this individual was jailed in April before his sentencing. He was sentenced in November, and he will walk free from prison on the 5th of January. So, I mean, that doesn't really feel like justice to Emma, and she's wondering, why did I go through that process?
The reason I mentioned Thursday and the press conference you were at was because we were speaking about this. While you were at that, I was at a court case in the CCJ in central Dublin. And it was similar. It was a man called Ronaldo Lupo, and he was charged. He pleaded guilty to really a sickening assault on two women, Abby Tierney and a lady called Lauren Boyle Hanney. Now, Miss Hanney is the daughter of Roddy Collins, very well-known manager and football pundit, and he contacted us before the court case because he wanted coverage of the trial. So I went in to that case while you were there on Thursday at the press conference. So I was working the reality, I suppose, of this issue, and it was pretty shocking. He subjected Miss Tierney, Miss Boyle Hanney first, subjected her to a really, really shocking attack. She actually told me, and we're going to play the video in a moment, she thought she was going to die that night. That's the reality of violence against women. She was crawling away from the attacker and he kicked her full force in the face. And Lauren actually released photographs to us. We had them in the Mirror online of her face in the aftermath of that attack, and it really was stomach churning. She was being attacked. Her friend Abby Tierney went to help her, and he punched her and knocked her unconscious. So really, it was really shocking attack on two defenceless women. He pleaded guilty. He got 2 years and 9 months. Now, you and I do this all the time, Paul. I worked out because you get standard 25% remission, and he has been in custody since February of this year. So the sentence is automatically backdated to when he goes into custody, and the 25% comes in from the rest of it. So essentially, he has just under 18 months to serve. He will walk free in 18 months. Roddy Collins spoke to me afterwards, and Lauren herself spoke to me afterwards. We're going to play it now, but it's about 5 minutes long. I would urge listeners and viewers to listen to this because it's the reality of violence against women, and you also see both their reactions to the sentence, and it's fair to say they were not happy, and they're entitled, and it's their right not to be happy with the sentencing. Lauren, your attacker has been jailed for 2 years and 9 months. What were your emotions today in court when you saw him in the stand?
Fear, disappointment, and overwhelmed. It was hard seeing him again in the courtroom.
Did it bring it back for you?
Yeah, my body tensed up. I could feel my body tensing up. It wasn't easy. I'm even tearing up, like shaking up about it, speaking about it now. No, it wasn't nice. Yeah.
And we were hoping for a longer sentence because Lauren has said to me multiple times that if he gets a small sentence or whatever he gets, will he come after me when he gets out? Now, if he gets 5 years and whatever way it works in the system, at least you can say, well, look, you'll be 3 years older when he gets out, or 4 years old or whatever. You'll have time to, process and learn how to live with it. But to get a sentence like that for me, it's a joke. I mean, the justice system is a joke in situations like this. The record he had in the court previous that was read out, we know what happened in the room. They get second opinion on it. I'm very disappointed.
Lauren, tell me, did you think you were going to die that night?
Yeah, I fully believed I was going to die. He looked at us all and said, "Yous are all going to die tonight," with such anger. I'll never forget it in his eyes. And he was going for weapons, and I genuinely thought someone was going to pass away that night. It was scary. It was really, really scary.
And he will walk free in 18 months. He got a 2 year, 9 months, but with being backdated and remission. How do you feel about that?
To be honest, I just hope it doesn't happen to any other young woman out there again. The bit on edge that he's getting out in 18 months, like what if it comes back to bite? Retaliation, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, it's...
I know, yeah.
It's not nice to think about.
Yeah.
And how have the last 2 years been for you, physically and mentally?
I lost a year of my life, with my self-confidence, with my sense of security, with my sense of self. It took me a long time to process what happened to me, and it wasn't easier. It wasn't. The past 2 years I'm still trying to get over it. I tense up even speaking about it.
And Roddy, what are your thoughts?
And I'm angry, of course I am. I mean, she didn't slip of a kid, you know, and to think anyone, you know, could viciously assault one of your own, anyone, is it's not nice. It's not something we were reared like, you know. We were reared and never ever put your hand on anyone, but particularly never put your hand on a woman and a young kid.
May I ask you, does this give you some form of closure now that he has been jailed and convicted and has admitted his guilt?
Yes and no. In a sense it does, because he has been jailed, but I don't feel as if he should have gotten more than what he was served and what.
Yeah, well, the thing about it is, while he's in there, Lauren, we will hope that everything that was read out in court and everything that was said is true, and that he will come out with remorse, with realisation what he's done to you, and maybe he will change. According to other people, that's not going to happen, but you would hope. That's the only hope you have, that when he gets that and comes out, he might be different.
And that was a night of survival. It wasn't a night of just a little hit and just walk away. It was a night of survival. I genuinely thought I was going to die that night. It was that scary. But I just hope that it's never okay to get the message out that it's never okay for men to hit women. Like, but stand
Lauren,
up and speak
Lauren,
up.
You told me the other night, I never asked Lauren, she was crawling across the floor and he gave her a full force kick into the face. I mean, you wouldn't do that to a dog, you wouldn't do that, you know. And she jumped into the situation to save this girl who she didn't really know. To save her, that was her instinct.
Last question, do you believe his remorse?
No, I don't. I really, really don't. You can tell when someone's remorseful. You can feel it in their energy. I don't feel any remorse of him.
I agree.
So that was the clip, which, you
Pretty
know,
grim, Paul.
It speaks for itself in a way. I saw the photograph of her injuries, and I just, like, it's hard. Again, we're not supposed to have opinions, but when you see something like that twisted, and then you see the pain, you know, of they went through that process, they went through the courts, and then they feel at the end of it all, not what was the point of it, because I'm sure she's happy that she got some form of justice and that she can name and shame this guy. But you know, I mean, is that justice? And we're talking about so many cases where the victim ultimately feels they didn't get justice.
So there's two elements to this. Lauren and Roddy are both entitled to be unhappy at this sentence. It's Lauren's life and she's entitled to give her views. There is also a sense, and this has happened to us lots of times, how many victims in violence or sex crimes contact us because they want to see the attacker named and shamed. Well, you can't say named and shamed, but they always want people to see the reality of this person. And we can see Ronaldo Lupo's reality. I was listening in court, and I was going, Jesus Christ. He had something like more than 52 previous convictions, 3, I think, for assault, got, suspended sentences. This fella, he's a scumbag, really. And I don't like using that word, but look, what he subjected those 2 women to, he's beneath contempt, and he'll walk free in 18 months. So she wanted to highlight that. So look, I think there was a measure of, they wanted people to know this man's reality, but there's absolutely no doubt they were far from happy with that sentence.
Yeah, a horrendous case. I just want to mention, because I made an error, that the incident that happened to Emma Hallahan, it didn't happen in Wexford, sorry, it happened in Dungarvan in County Waterford. And her attacker, I actually just accidentally didn't name him, but we have also named him. He is Anthony Mackesy, a 42-year-old HSE pharmaceutical worker. And just talking about this, sentencing process, I want to raise, I'll have a story out hopefully tomorrow morning on this. Emma is hoping that the DPP ultimately appeals the sentencing of Mackesy, even though he is going to walk free in, just over a month's time. She feels the sentence is too light and it didn't really reflect the gravity of it. He was convicted of a Section 3 assault, but I mean, he did threaten to kill her a number of times. Those are facts of the case, but he wasn't charged with that. And he also, he used to bring her to murder sites. Like, she was in a very abusive, horrific relationship with this man for over a year. Aside from that, and this is quite harrowing, there was a letter handed in to the judge before the sentencing, reportedly from Mackesy's employer, the HSE, University Hospital Limerick, which spoke to his good character and basically essentially said that he would have a job, depending upon the outcome of the case, still there for him. I'm now told that the HSE and the University Hospital Limerick do not know about the existence of this letter at all. And Emma has gone on to the hospital about this, and I understand that Gardaí have been informed in relation to this, because this letter, albeit it was supposedly from the HSE and the hospital know absolutely nothing about it. And that would have been taken into consideration in terms of mitigation and given him potentially part of his lesser sentence.
So it's a forgery.
That is the allegation. I mean, look, it's up to the guards to investigate whether it's a forgery, but certainly the hospital and the HSE are saying this, we're not aware of this document. And I'm told, I suppose more unofficially, that something like that would never have been written for a domestic abuser like this, and he certainly will not be going back to his job at the end of this. So there's a lot of questions to be asked there, and a lot of questions to be answered, but also it possibly would, I think, form part of an appeal, and there should be an appeal in this case. If that is the case, that was a forged letter, they have to look at this case again and they have to resentence him.
Did I hear you right? He brought her to murder scenes.
Mackesy brought Emma to murder scenes. As I said, they lived in Dungarvan. Yeah, they lived in Dungarvan, so he brought her to Youghal and sat her outside Tina Satchwell's home. And he was obsessed apparently with true crime and wanted to bring her to the house down in West Cork as well, where Sophie Toscan-de-Plantier was murdered.
Jesus Christ.
And yet this guy walks free in January, as I say. Look, I think that's a common theme with a lot of these cases. The victims ultimately feel that they don't get justice. And I just wonder in general, and we could spend an hour talking about this, but the justice system does not seem to be up to scratch when it comes to both domestic violence and sexual abuse cases. The sentencing process frequently lets victims down, and even just the process itself of even going to court and getting it to court is so stressful. I don't know. There has to be.
I've been in Spanish courts a couple of times, and it's interesting. Spain has a horrible problem with domestic violence, but over there, like, when you're in court, Paul, there's the barrister for the accused, there's the barrister who's the prosecuting barrister, the barrister for the state. Okay, so they have that, obviously, a lawyer in Spain. But also in Spain, they have an independent barrister who acts for the victim. And even that is a significant step forward. Why can we not have this here, that there's a legal professional, a barrister, whose job it is to protect the rights of the victim in the whole case? Because a lot of victims I speak to, and I'm sure you're the same, Paul, is that it's almost as if sometimes they're watching as spectators.
Yes.
And that they don't count.
Yeah, I mean, Hazel Behan has told me, she was treated as a witness in her case. She said, "I'm not a witness. I am a survivor of abuse, of rape. I'm more than a witness." And Emma Hallahan even said to me that going to court was a lonely process, and she's sitting there while supporters and family members of the man who assaulted her are in court, gathered together, supporting him, and she, felt vulnerable in that process. And there's nobody there really. I mean, apart from maybe the investigating guard. And her own loved ones, she just felt, re-victimized, re-traumatized by the process. And I can't tell you how many times people have said that to me.
Yeah, I also find, just to get back to your earlier point, a lot of victims do find it important that their attacker, that their abuser is named and photographed. And that's why if you read all the court cases, our colleagues in CCC who have the tough job of covering sex abuse cases all the time, the number of times they will write a story and it will be that The victim waived her or his right to anonymity so their attacker could be named. And that is really important. And I've thought about this. The abuse is secret. The person abusing usually the children, or sometimes adults, but usually children, does it. They have a persona, a public persona, and their private persona. And victims want the public to see the private aspect of their abuser, and that's why it's so important.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, that's not where it ends in terms of horrendous incidents. Two really horrible and, in a way, similar incidents occurred this week. The first one involving a woman who really is quite lucky to be alive. Tell us about this, Mick.
Yeah, so this was on Monday. News of this emerged on Monday afternoon. Essentially, there was an incident in Leixlip in County Kildare. A man was estranged from his wife. She was in the house in Leixlip in Kildare. 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday, he breaks in with an axe, attacks her, subjects her to a really, really horrific attack, sets fire to parts of the house, probably throws her down the stairs, or she falls down the stairs. He leaves the scene, does a runner, and his body is found, I think it's the reservoir in Leixlip, a couple of hours later. So essentially what happened, the Garda investigation is ongoing, but this is the belief. The man attacked his estranged wife and then took his own life. A month earlier, 6 weeks earlier, the man had appeared in court charged with assault causing harm to the same lady, his wife. And he was released on bail, and he was out and about, and he went and he attacked her. Now, he was also charged with criminal damage. He broke her glasses in that incident. But he was due back up in court in March of next year when he would learn whether the case was going to be kept at district court level or it was going to be what you would call an indictable offence. So it would go to the circuit court. If it goes to the circuit court, he would have had the prospect of a 5-year sentence. Now, maybe if he pleaded guilty, he may have got 2 years, 9 months like your man did. But he was facing really significant jail time for that. But he cheated justice by attacking her a second time and taking his own life. And that, how many women are suffering abuse like this? Now, I know that the man took his own life, but how many women are attacked in their own homes by their ex-husbands or their ex-partners? There's an absolute epidemic of this in Ireland.
Massively so, and that this is where I feel the justice system can be out of kilter. Like I'm just going back to the recent case of Emma because this guy got a year sentence. He's out in 6 months because he ultimately didn't succeed in what he actually had threatened to do, which he kept saying that he was going to kill her. Well, the justice system punished him for the assaults that he carried out, albeit he didn't manage to kill her. If he had killed her, he'd be serving life in prison, whatever. That's where it's not up to scratch. This man has escaped justice in this case in Leixlip because he took his own life. And in a way, we may never know who he is because he's going to be protected with anonymity because unfortunately, and thankfully this poor woman, she will live. But we would be identifying her if we identified him. But it just goes to show you that there are men out there that seem to think they can get away with this. And then if they do carry it out, I don't think that they kill themselves out of guilt. It's more so they don't want to live with the consequences, which is that they should be rightfully punished for that.
There was an aspect of this court case of Ronaldo Lupo and Lauren Boyle Hanney and Abby Tierney. He said when he was attacking them, "You will die tonight." So you may think, okay, looking back in hindsight, they knew they weren't going to be killed. But in the moment, they thought, Lauren told me she thought she was going to die. And you can listen, she said it in the recording. She thought she was going to die. And that's how terrifying this is for victims.
Do we know in this case, this woman was attacked with an axe. So do we know how she's doing now?
Yes. Thankfully, her injuries are not life-threatening. I think there were initial concerns for her, but she's out of danger. But she has significant injuries, but thankfully she will live.
Well, that's good news, at least, I suppose. A horrific, harrowing incident. And unfortunately, it's one of two brutal incidents this week. The other incident being in Clondalkin, and as of the recording of this podcast, the victim in this case is still in a critical condition. People may be aware, if they've been looking at the news over the past couple of days, a 43-year-old woman was attacked at her own home. She answered the door to a thug who doused her in an accelerant, maybe petrol, some form of liquid accelerant. It was thrown over her face and her body, and then this person set her on fire at her own front door. There was a man also present, her partner, who I'll talk about in a minute, and he was also attacked, although I'm told that he managed to duck most of the accelerant. He then injured himself with his own hands because he was desperately trying to put out the fire on his partner. I was up there in Clondalkin. It's a very quiet, small estate just off the Boot Road. And people were just shocked. And I spoke to a number of neighbours, one of whom had actually witnessed the whole thing. So she heard screaming. She looked out her window and she saw this person, this woman in her front garden, completely engulfed in flames.
Can you imagine seeing that?
I mean, that person is going to need help, you know. It's a horrendous sight for anybody to see. And I just, you know, what level of depravity have we gotten to where somebody can think it's okay, woman or man, to set somebody on fire, whatever the circumstances, the background of this may be, and we can talk about that. This woman, and even the man in this case, did not deserve to be attacked in this way. It's just a horrible thing to do to another human being.
Can we talk about motive, or what the suspected motive by Gardaí is?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's drugs. That is the suspicion. This is an ongoing dispute in relation to a drug debt, an alleged drug debt. And, I mean, you're not talking huge money here. You're talking about, you know, relatively small stuff. But the partner in this case of this woman is well known to Gardaí, and his name is Francis Maguire. So he's a 49-year-old career criminal, really. He has 25 previous convictions to his name. He's a convicted burglar. And in 2021, he was jailed for 2 years for effectively burglaring a convent, and also for driving a stolen car, which he crashed into another car containing a family with a small child. Luckily, nobody was injured, but he was driving erratically all over the place and was caught in the Lucan area in 2019. In this car, where the items that had been stolen from the convent were found inside, and his DNA was also found at the scene. So he was caught red-handed. He pleaded guilty, and he was lucky not to have to serve more time. His own court case heard that he has addiction issues since he was very young, and those were mitigating factors that were taken into consideration. Aside from that, he's a relatively petty thief, I'm told. He was recently arrested for a number of petty theft incidents, but he hasn't got a whole lot of serious convictions to his name. The burglary charge, the 2-year sentence, is probably the most significant, but, you know, he's one of these kind of low-life, kind of small, petty thug type person who just seems to have been in and out of the court system throughout much of his adult life, and he's got caught up in this row somehow, and this gang has decided to take this horrible action on him and his partner.
There will be people going, you know, it's criminals, let them at it. They're human beings, no matter what. We always hear this about if there's a gangland murder, everybody has the right to life. Everybody has, no matter what, everybody has the right to be left alone and not be attacked. So, you know, this is a very, very, it's, I mentioned the depravity of your man taking the lady to the murder scenes. Dousing people in petrol or whatever accelerant and setting them in fire. Do you remember that other lady who was kidnapped and tortured last year and the guards rescued her? It was the North Inner City, Dublin. So these are two events within 18 months of each other where really there are depraved attacks on women.
Well, it's another level in Gangland now, and we don't know exactly what criminal group is connected to this at this point. You could think of a number of groups that are out in that area, some more ruthless than others, but there definitely seems to be a younger generation, and it might not be in this case, but there does seem to be a younger generation of criminal out there that has absolutely no morals and does not care who gets caught in the crossfire. And I will say, to this woman's credit, she's not really well known to Gardaí. She has her difficulties. She's had a difficult life. She is in a relationship with this criminal, Frances Maguire. I'm not naming her at this point in time.
How,
She is an innocent party, really, who has been caught up in this.
we said earlier that the lady who was attacked in Leak Slip doesn't really have, thankfully, life-threatening injuries. How's this lady doing?
Well, as I say, as we're recording of this podcast, she's in a critical condition in hospital. She suffered over 60% burns to her body. So she's being treated in Tala Hospital in a burns unit, and she's in intensive care, really. There are hopes that maybe she will survive, but her family members are with her, and they are obviously, naturally, understandably devastated by this. There are still concerns, in relation to her ongoing, for her future. I mean, if she does survive this, and hopefully, please God, she does, she has suffered life-changing injuries. And forget about the physical injuries even for a minute. Just think about the psychological, the traumatic effects of what had happened to this woman. She opened her own door to somebody who then set her on fire. I just cannot imagine it, the level of depravity.
And she'll no longer, I would imagine, she would no longer feel safer in her own home.
How could you? And I've told there were a number of incidents at this house over the years. This was obviously the significant escalation, but I mean, you could see that there had been damage to the house from prior incidents. And locals, as I say, it's actually quite a nice little estate. Oak Downs is the road, small road just off the Boot Road in Clondalkin, and people were just, it's out of the ordinary for the area, but people who live in the vicinity did tell me, look, there have been incidents, including the day before on Monday there, a group of people showed up allegedly with knives, carrying out a threat at the house, and then the next day, of course, this incident happened, but no criminal complaint was made to Gardaí when they showed up to the scene. So, and then that is common in Gangland, isn't it? They just like to sort their own stuff out, and they don't want to get involved with Gardaí, they don't want to be rats, etc. But again, this woman did not deserve what happened to her. I would still say she was deliberately targeted, in that she opened the door to this person, and this person just threw this accelerator at her and set her on fire. They knew full well who she was, so was she the main intended target? No, but this person still had absolutely no problem with attacking her as well.
And this person, in the quarter of a second before, I presume it was a he who carried out the attack, before he threw the accelerant on her, he would have clearly seen that his target was not the person standing in front of him. Didn't care. Just, that's it.
That's it.
Callous.
They don't care. He escaped on an electric bike, electric scooter, we're told, and that's it. There's been no sign of him since. Look, hopefully Gardaí get to the bottom of this. I will note that there was a lot of cameras around, so hopefully maybe CCTV has picked up something in this case. But it's just another level, another level.
Terrible. And look, just while it's not the most uplifting of pods today, but there are a couple of other issues I want to address. They call it violence against women and girls, VAWG, and that can mean a lot of things. There was one case that I was really struck by. I don't know if you read about it, Paul. A man who terrorised a young, I think she was 15 at the time, a 15-year-old teenage girl. He met her on Roblox. Like my kids would have played Roblox when they were younger. He met her, groomed her on that, and terrorised her for over a year. She had to send naked videos and pictures of herself. And it just struck me reading the copy that in her victim impact statement, she said she felt like an object for him to control. Like, and I'm reading it, she had to put her phone on, the video on at night so he could watch her sleep. He completely controlled that poor woman, that poor girl's life for a year. So I think he got jailed for 27 months, which is, it's a sentence. And maybe it'll be a deterrent to others. And then we talk about child abuse imagery. Earlier this week, a man was jailed, I think, for 2.5 years by Judge Martin Nolan at Dublin Circuit Criminal Court for what is legally called child pornography, what we call child abuse imagery. He had 1.5 million images. And that's 1.5 million images of abuse. I remember my friend Mick, who's the head of Hotline.at, I think we might be speaking to him in a couple of weeks. I remember him when he was in the Guards, he was in Interpol, really an expert on child abuse imagery. And I remember him telling me, people would think maybe a couple hundred images. so many people now, when they collect child abuse imagery, have millions of images. So that 1.5 million images is not out of the ordinary. You can't even quantify that. You can't even get your head around that. But that man had 1.5 million images of children being abused.
And I note what you said there, that the presiding judge in that case was Judge Martin Nolan, and people often have their criticism of Judge Nolan. Judge Nolan jailed this person for 2.5 years, so it's not as though this is a subject matter that the judge does not take seriously. Obviously, that's a particularly egregious case. People might argue that even that's not enough, but this person, at least in this case, was jailed.
He got locked up, yeah, and the judge, look, Judge Nolan does get an awful lot of criticism, but Judge Nolan jailed this man earlier this week, so that has to come out. News is news.
Absolutely. There's two other things we want to discuss at the tail end of this podcast. Obviously, as of the recording of this podcast, there is a child by the name of Benjamin Spott who is still missing. And Mick, you were working a bit on this case today and yesterday.
Yeah, look, there are so many. You get the press releases, Paul, like I do. There are so many missing person appeals every week that you look at them and you gloss over them. So he went missing last Wednesday, so this is Thursday, so 8 days ago in Navan in County Meath. He was last seen cycling in the Ramparts Kentstown Road area, close to the centre of Navan and close beside the River Boyne, and that's crucial. So a second appeal was made yesterday, Wednesday, on the first week of his disappearance. So that got me slightly interested, because you see a 14-year-old boy missing for a week. So I made some inquiries, and essentially the guards are very pessimistic about this case. The belief is that the young boy, he's only 5'1", I think he's from the area, fell into the River Boyne. So the Garda helicopter is out. I think the water unit divers are out, and there's now a significant search in the River Boyne for that young boy, and that's not good news at all.
That's a horrible case. Look, we'll have to keep an eye on it. Obviously, we don't know. It could even update us the time we finish this podcast. But yeah, as you say, a week on, and if they're searching, in water, look, thoughts go out to that family. I just can't imagine it, really.
It's shocking, really shocking. Hopefully there'll be news.
The last subject we want to touch on this podcast is, and it's only really kind of just happened, the mansion, if you can call it that, very large house that was owned by the murdered gangster Fat Andy Connors out in Saggart has sold at auction. And people may remember that the family of Andy Connors put up quite a bit of a fight to keep this property, and there was a bit of a dispute back and forth between his wife, the council, and it ended up in the High Court even, that she was trying to she had people living in campsites, and that there was a whole legal dispute over that. But anyway, it's gone through the process of an auction, and you were following this.
Yeah, I was actually watching it online, and I was nervous that I'd accidentally bid myself. So it went on. The auction started, I think it was around midday, and it was scheduled to last for an hour. It lasted just over an hour. There were no bids for the first 50 minutes, and I was going, Jesus, is my computer broken? But then at 12:56, the first bid came in. So there was a minimum bid of, I think it was 360,000. So that bid was made, and it ended at 6 minutes past 1, started at 4 minutes to 1, so 10 minutes effectively. 12:56 to 1:06 p.m. There were 22 bids in that time, so it was quite exciting watching it. Essentially, there were two bidders, bidder 1 and bidder 2. Bidder 1 won out with a bid of 420,000. Now, that's higher than the 360 minimum bid, but it's nowhere near the valuation that it went. Andy Connors put it up for sale in 2005. He was having troubles with the Criminal Assets Bureau, and this sale is part of the Andy Connors' wife, widow Anne. After his murder in 2017, she got a €2.5 million tax bill from the Criminal Assets Bureau on his proceeds of crime. That's an assessment by CAB. So this property was sold, and the profit from it, the €420,000, will go to paying some of that tax bill. But he put it up on sale in 2005 for £3 million. Now, I know 2005 is 20 years ago, nearly 21 years ago, but that's a big reduction as to what its value was at the time.
With inflation now, what would that be? Some crazy amount. Yeah.
So it went very quickly in the end. It was sort of slow, quick.
Is it a house that you would have bought if you could?
No, I often wonder about these houses. Would you want to live in somewhere like that? Just the grief that there could be associated with it, you know?
hmm Yeah, I don't think so. And there's been an awful lot of problems with that site. People who live locally have wanted it gone for some time. So look, whoever owns it now, hopefully they'll be a good homeowner to it and maybe give it a new lease of life. We obviously know Fat Andy Connors was murdered in 2014 and famously or infamously buried in a gold coffin, which really showed you the level of wealth that he and his family have. It's extraordinary.
And he was a prolific burglar. He was heavily involved in burgling around the country. His gang would roam all over Ireland, and they made a mint from burglaries. He was shot out. I remember covering it at the time. It was August 2014, I think. He was shot at another house. He had another big, huge house, which was called the Ranch, also in the sort of Sagard area. This was called the Villa, 1.1 acres, 5 bedrooms, huge, a good bit of land to it. So I'd say it might be done for redevelopment or something. You never know.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that. So until our next podcast, thanks very much. Thanks, Mick.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, everybody.